Hello, I'm Matt Travis, Managing Director of Enzygo Environmental Consultants. We've got 6 offices across the UK in Belfast, Manchester, Sheffield, Cambridge, Cardiff and Bristol. We're here today to talk about the new NPPF consultation and the impacts on that in terms of landscape and visual impact assessment. I've got 2 guests with me today. I've got Paul, who's one of our Directors of Landscape at Enzygo, and I've got David from CMS, who's a planning barrister.
My name is Paul Beswick. I'm a Director of Landscape at Enzygo.
And David?
Yes, so David Hardy. I'm duly qualified as a barrister and a solicitor, but I'm a partner in CMS and one of 3 partners based in the Sheffield office.
Thank you. So Paul, I'll put the first question across to you. Just for some people who are watching or listening to this who don't understand some of the technical terms, could you explain what is an LVIA? Why is it needed? And just to help some of our client base, what sort of range of costs do they have for that?
Okay, I'll deal with the first one first. What is LVIA? LVIA is the methodology that we use to assess landscape character and visual amenity and the effects of a development. So the effects of a development on the baseline, which is what is the landscape is now, effectively. Yeah.
And why are we needing those at the moment? I know everything's driven by the planning framework, but what drives the need for the LVIA?
It's about significance. It's about how significant a development is on the landscape and obviously the way people view that landscape. So effectively, a small-scale development is unlikely to require a landscape and visual impact assessment, but a large-scale one is, and that's simply to ensure that we leave the landscape in as good a condition or as good a condition as we possibly can after following development. Yeah.
Okay, and I know one topic, because we've talked about this in different technical services to do, what's the sort of range in costs in these things? And I know it's a little bit like, depends on how big it is or how long's a piece of string, but what sort of prices can people expect when they commission this work?
It can vary significantly. A very simple landscape and visual appraisal can be as little as £2,500–3,000, and all singing, all dancing LVIA for a significant development can be, £20,000–30,000.
That's really useful for people to get a feel. So just across to you, David, there's been some really big changes in green belt, grey belt, and I know Paul's got some comments on those. How do you think this change of bringing in something that we're now terming the grey belt, how's that going to impact landscape assessments?
Well, so Greenbelt, of course, is a planning policy designation, but what we have always found is that landscape consultants have a really big part to play when they're assessing the visual component of openness. Now, that's different to standard LVIA material, but we use a combination of planners and landscape consultants to do that. So what's the grey belt? The government has got the idea of releasing certain low-performing greenbelt parcels of land, which provide a limited contribution to the Greenbelt's core values. That is going to involve looking at the 2 aspects of openness, a spatial aspect, visual aspect. That's a key role, I think, for landscape consultants going forward.
And what have you got any further thoughts on that, Paul?
Yeah, no, I definitely do. The grey belt, as I see it, is obviously Keir Starmer quite clearly said it was part of the green belt which was ugly, which for me also provided an opportunity for us to look at the landscape quantitatively or qualitatively. So the NPPF introduced a sort of valued landscape last time round. It seems to have gone a little bit further this time. So I think it's going to cause some interesting problems.
Do you think there'll be an inquiry deciding on value of landscape and it'll go more towards that sort of adversarial way?
Ugliness is entirely subjective. Yeah. So So I suspect that there will be a lot of appeals about what is considered beautiful, what is considered attractive. Yeah.
It could be quite interesting and also quite humorous at the same time. Yeah. Okay. David, do you see the new NPF draft? Do you see it impacting landscape assessments? Do you think we'll have to do things differently?
No, I think that the call for good quality, accurate landscape assessment is still there. But I do think that in this Greenbelt question, I do think that involving landscape consultants and having them working alongside planners to look at the how the land performs in greenbelt purpose terms is going to be really important. There's a renewed emphasis, on that. And I think just following up really what's been said, I live in near Leeds in the greenbelt, and it is very varied. It is a policy designation, but that includes your equestrian centres and your garden centres and your sand and gravel extraction. It is not the kind of beautiful green idyll that lots of people think it is.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I always, as you know, Paul, I always find landscape very interesting how subjective it is, because a lot of the work that I do in my own technical discipline is quite black and white, and I always think landscape's always very open to interpretation.